Welcome back to the news at 10. Protesters comprising students and staff of the Obafemi Awolowo University Ile-Ife have stormed the zonal office of the EFCC in Ibadan, calling for the release of their acting vice-chancellor, who's in EFCC custody for allegedly diverting 1.4 billion naira. The vice-chancellor, Professor Anthony Elujoba, and the university's bursar, Mrs. Aderonke Akeredolu, were invited for questioning as a result of a petition which came from some members of the university's community.
The serene atmosphere at the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission in Iyagoku GRA in Ibadan is altered by this unusual crowd. The acting vice-chancellor of the Obafemi Awolowo University Ile-Ife is at this premises to answer allegations of bribery.
We have bursar in the OAU. We have registrar in the OAU. Since the assumption of Baba Lujoba in the office, no cordial relationship between him and the two officers that we have mentioned. It is those officers that are supposed to be guiding him here and there. But instead of doing that, they just neglected him.
An official of the commission, Ayo Oyewole, told Channels Television that the invitation was sent since November 25th, consequent upon a petition filed by members of the university community.
We are not saying they should not investigate him. If there is anything that they want to investigate about him, let them investigate. But the only thing we are actually against as a union is why somebody who spent 5 years, that several things went wrong during his period, it is in public view that everyone knows that person is not actually questioned, is not called for interrogation. Now they are calling someone who is doing things right for interrogation.
Professor Anthony Elujoba became acting vice-chancellor of Obafemi Awolowo University in July 2016 after the crisis of leadership within the management and board of the institution. This crisis is coinciding with the EFCC's investigation. It's not clear when peace will eventually return to the embattled institution, but there's a general consensus that peace should not tarry.
To a different sort of crisis now, residents of Obosi, a community in Idemili, North Local Government Area of Anambra State, are troubled by what appears to be a conflict of interest between the traditional stool and some interest groups in the area. Our community report tonight looks at the issues and how the government hopes to prevent a breakdown of law and order.
The emergence of a king in some communities is usually characterized by tussle by various interested parties. And that is the scenario that is playing out in Obosi community in Idemili North Local Government Area of Anambra State, Southeast Nigeria. The enthronement of Chidubem Iweka as the paramount ruler of Obosi land has witnessed unrest in the town, with many attributing the situation to the disagreement over his kingship.
The revenue in the community, in Obosi community, is supposed to be directly under the town union. But because the traditional institution, they have been enjoying it because we had lacuna for PG election for 4 years. So the traditional institution was manning it. So as they were manning it, they don't have any other option when I came in to hand over. They say it is their birthright. So all the money that comes into Obosi, even Okada people, even Keke people, they say it belongs to them. So there's no money the town union will use to work.
What we have here is that what we are witnessing at Obosi is cultism. Cultism. And that's all.
The king, on his part, remains adamant that his ascendancy to the throne is nothing but divine favor, insisting that he has the backing of the people. Otherwise, he would not be there.
There are people who are laying claims to the throne, and naturally, they're not happy that I'm the one sitting on the throne. So they're always coming up with one accusation, trumped up charges, one or the other. It's nothing new. They've been doing this for 5 years. I've been sitting on this throne for 5 years. If you want to know who I am, If you want to know about me, ask the prominent people of Obosi, ask the masses. Go to the grassroots, and they'll tell you about me.
The governor of the state has set up a panel to look into the crises with a view to finding a lasting solution. According to the governor's special advisor on security, all has been done to see the matter resolved peacefully.
Why the Obosi crisis seems intractable is because in most cases, when a report of an assassination is made, no group will be willing, will come out to own up to say that they're actually responsible. What you see is this group will accuse the other group, and the other group will accuse the other. It has happened several times, and it makes it difficult for the police or the security agencies to pin down on somebody.
For peace to reign in Obosi land, all warring factions must look beyond their differences and see that the development of the land is more important than personal interests. Because for as long as the tussle for the throne continues, discord will always be the ruler of the land.
The Bank of Industry has signed a 10 billion naira agro mechanization fund with development partners to support the businesses of farmers across the country. The acting managing director of the bank, Mr. Wahid Olagunju, who spoke at the ceremony in Abuja, says the initiative is expected to create employment and boost productivity. He also says that over 40,000 jobs are expected to be generated through the scheme.
Nigeria, no doubt, is endowed with arable land, which when cultivated could contribute significantly to the nation's development. This, however, has remained a tall dream for farmers over the years, as many of them depend on simple farm implements to cultivate their land, often leading to poor yields, low harvest and income. This, however, may be changing soon, as the Bank of Industry says it has put in place measures to change the story.
We have tried at the Bank of Industry in recent times to come up with various programs in support of agriculture. One of them is the Cottage and Agro Processing Fund, which is a 5 billion fund. We also have the Fish Farming and Processing Program, which is a 1 billion fund. And then the Animal and Fisheries program, which is also the 1 billion naira fund. The Agro Mechanization Fund is 10 billion, which is the highest of any of the programs, which shows that we are according a lot of attention to agriculture, because our industrialization must be driven by the agricultural sector.
Officials of the Bank of Industry give major highlights of the expected outcome of the fund.
Agro Mechanization Product Program is directed at the youth, as well as established service providers under the agricultural value chain. We are very hopeful that this initiative, which the Bank of Industry, in collaboration with its development partners, are going to be signing an MOU today, will contribute to the economic development of the country, and in particular, the agricultural industry.
The agreement for the agro mechanization funding is later signed by representatives of the Bank of Industry and development partners. The Agro Mechanization Fund targets the nation's youth, who will in turn create jobs for their peers and improve their income.
For the rest of the business news, here's Melinda Akinlami.
Thank you so much, Ijoma. On business news tonight, more details on the 2017 budget, a record 7.2 trillion naira, which is an increase of 20.4% compared to last year's spending plan. This fiscal plan will result in a deficit of 2.36 trillion naira for 2017, which is about 2.18% of the GDP. The deficit is expected to be financed mainly by borrowing, which is projected to be about 2.32 trillion naira. The federal government intends to source about 46% from external sources, while 1.2 trillion naira will be borrowed from the domestic market. The budget is also expected to focus on the rapid development of infrastructure. And the federal government plans to sign agreements that will formally terminate the joint venture cash calls it had with international oil companies. The event will take place on Thursday and will feature a presentation of the Petroleum Ministry's 2016 Ministerial Scorecard, with the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, in attendance. Nigeria is in arrears of nearly $6 billion of cash calls payable to oil companies that do business with the country. Oil prices are down about 1% following concerns about excess crude supply. Latest data from the Energy Information Administration shows inventories at the Oklahoma delivery hub rose once again for a sixth build in 7 weeks. International benchmark Brent crude futures were down by 97 cents to $54.75 per barrel, and Saudi authorities believe it would take some more time for the market to stabilize after the deal between OPEC and rival producers. The Nigerian equities market extended gains for the fifth consecutive session, beating Tuesday's figures. Bisi Adebayo has more details.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Reports. The Nigerian stock market continues its rally ahead of Christmas and New Year, shaking off massive sell-offs recorded in November. Today, the general index surges 1.29% on a decent trading session that totals more than $13 million or 4.27 billion naira in more than 3,000 transactions. In terms of price gains, 40 Oil added another 10.24%, leading 32 other advances. Meantime, Champion Breweries and Airline Services were the top three losers for this session. Banking stocks retained the most active status, led by UBA, Diamond Bank, and Zenith Bank. And that ends the Stock Market Reports. I am Bisi Adebayo.
U.S. markets pause on Wednesday in front of the Fed rate hike decision. With more from the NASDAQ market site in New York is Gil Malandrino, BOI Channels TV correspondent.
U.S. stocks opened slightly lower across the board. The S&P and Dow down about 0.2%, and the tech-heavy NASDAQ essentially flat. This is in front of the Federal Reserve interest rate hike decision at 2 p.m. Eastern, followed by the press conference with Fed Chair Janet Yellen at 2:30. I would expect action to be relatively quiet until then. By the time you see this report, the market will have reacted. But as of now, traders in the U.S. are pricing in a 95% chance of that happening. Let's take a look at the record-setting performance leading into today's session. That's the big story this week. The Dow posted a triple-digit gain that left it less than 100 points away from 20,000. The S&P gained 0.8%. The NASDAQ rose 1%, but the Russell closed near its flat line after surging the most over the last few weeks since President-elect Donald Trump was announced. From the NASDAQ market site in Times Square, New York City, I'm Jill Malandrino, and this is VOA Channels TV, Business TV.
As the U.S. Federal Reserve raises its key interest rates for the second time in 10 years, markets in Asia closed in mixed sentiment, but it's mostly negative across board for European markets. Let's take a look at that data. And that's Business News. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Melinda Akinlami.
Next on the news at 10, Nigeria's Super Falcons staged protest at the gates of the National Assembly to demand payment of bonuses and allowances. That's on sports. This stays.